Foodies and wine lovers, mark your calendars. The Fredericksburg Food and Wine Festival is back October 21st through the 26th, 2025, and this year's lineup is bigger than ever. From tacos and tequila at El Quincho to the Texas Black Tie Barbecue at Becker Vineyards, to the heart of it all, the grand tasting with more than 75 pours from Texas wineries, chefs, and artisans, so you don't want to miss it. While all access badges are already sold out, there are still plenty of ways to join the fun. Grab a grand tasting badge or a VIP badge, which gets you into the grand tasting an hour early and gives you access to the Grape Creek Vineyards VIP Lounge. Most of the a la carte events, such as the opening night at the Albert Hotel presented by William Chris Vineyards, the Wine Barrel Auction presented by Texas Wine Auction, and Waterfront Brunch at Fisher & Weiser Farmstead still have tickets left as well. Plus, proceeds support the Hill Country Hospitality Relief Fund, helping local workers recover from recent floods. Tickets are moving fast. Several events are already sold out, so snag yours today at fbgfoodandwine.com. See you in Fredericksburg this October.
Howdy, Vine Trippers. I wanted to take just a moment before the show begins to tell you a little bit about the Texas Wine Lover website and app. It is a definite must-have for anyone wanting to explore the Texas wine industry. Now, they have a website. It's txwinelover.com, but they also have an app that you can actually download to your phone. You can find it on the Apple App Store or on the Google Play Store for Android devices. And it's going to be kind of your one-stop shop for when you go out to visit these great places. So you get to listen to them here on the podcast or watch them on YouTube to learn about these wineries. But when you go to visit, make sure you're checking out that app, because I'm sure you're probably going to want to visit other places in the area as well. And you can do incredible searches. It's the most comprehensive listing of winery information in Texas. And you can look for wineries in your area to go visit multiple places. You can sort those listings by finding out ones that are kid-friendly, maybe some that are pet-friendly. If you want to look for events or things that are going on, if you want to find those that can host RVs, just about any category you can think of, you can actually sort those listings and find wineries around you to go visit. The app is free to use for you and I. So it's a perfect, again, hand-in-hand tool when you're going out to visit wineries. Listen to them on this podcast, watch them on YouTube, and then start making your plans to go visit and use the Texas Wine Lover app when you go. Now, it can also be a great tool. Maybe you're not even looking for a winery. You just happen to be traveling to some place in Texas, and you just might think, I've got a little extra time. I wonder if there are any wineries in the area. You can actually look them up in the Texas Wine Lover app. You can search either by the name of a winery, or it's got a map view. So you can actually pull up a map of the area around you and see locations of wineries near you and go visit them and support the Texas wine industry. So you got to use the Texas Wine Lover app. It goes perfectly with this podcast. So make sure you check it out before you go on your next trip among the vines. Again, it's www.txwinelover.com, or look up the Texas Wine Lover app on your favorite phone app store, and make sure you get that downloaded and use it frequently. You will benefit from it, and ask for Texas wines. Let's see the Texas wine industry prosper, and go visit some of these fun places that I'm bringing to you on the show.
Texas Under Vine, an exploratory podcast to scout out the best Texas wine country has to offer. I'm your wine guide, Scott, and I'm here to lead you on an auditory expedition to the vineyards and wineries across the great Lone Star State. Each episode will cover a different vineyard, winery, or wine-related business operating in Texas. You'll hear interviews, descriptions, and details about each location that will excite you to visit and experience them for yourself. Ready to plan a wine tour? Use these episodes to choose the most interesting spots for you and your friends to check out. Most of all, enjoy hearing about the rapidly growing wine industry in the state
and what makes our wines and wineries the best. Howdy, fellow Vine Tripper. Welcome to episode 69 for the Texas Under Vine podcast. And in this episode, I continued my road trip this summer up into the northern regions of Texas and ventured about an hour or so north of the DFW area into the Texoma AVA region and found myself in a little town called St. Joe, Texas. And here I stopped in at a fun little family-owned vineyard and winery called Arche. Now, this little winery and vineyard actually got its humble start back when the land was purchased by the Davies family in 1999. They had intentions of actually growing wine grapes on the property. Interestingly enough, the land before they purchased it was growing table grapes there on the property that didn't do so well. And so that's why they sold it. And the Davies bought it with the idea of using the infrastructure that was there, all of the trellises and things like that, to instead grow wine grapes and sell them to wineries and other places around Texas. Now, in the Davies family, one of their sons, Grayson, actually grew up with the winery and the vineyard and working in the vineyard and decided that this is the path that he wanted to take in life. So he actually went to Texas Tech University to study viticulture and enology there, was in the very first class there at Texas Tech for viticulture and enology. And he came back and became their full-time winemaker in 2010. Now, the winery side of Arche didn't actually get up and going until about 2007. Previous to that, they were just selling their grapes that they were growing to other wineries around Texas. And the buildings in their current form actually took root around 2009. Now, one of their goals there at Arche is they want to be able to grow all the grapes used for their wine on site in their estate vineyard, and they're almost there. They've been working for about 10 years to try to get to this point. Now, as I said, it was previously growing table grapes there on the property. So grapes have been growing on this land for quite some time now. And as of right now, Cabernet Sauvignon is the only grape varietal that they don't have planted on site. They source that from another vineyard in Texas to be able to fit into one of their blends. You'll hear a little bit more about that one in the interview. And other than that, all of the other wines that they serve there and make there at Arche are grown there on their estate property. They currently have about 8 acres of vines planted in their vineyard, but they've got lots of room to grow and to add on as they, again, try to become completely estate-based. And they currently have Chardonnay, Roussanne, Marsanne, Viognier. They have Syrah, they have Alicante Bouschet, they have Mourvedre, and they have Grenache planted there on site. A lot of Southern Rhone varietals in that mix. And in addition to these wines, they also even have a sustainable growler program on site where you can actually get a growler that's refillable. You can bring that in. They have a few of their wines that are in kegs, and you can have that filled right from the tap, and saves from a lot of those bottles ending up in the landfill. And as I talked to their winemaker, Grayson Davies, he feels like 2024 is going to be their best year ever for the wines coming out of Arche. He said they put a lot of protocol changes in the winery. They did some changes in the vineyard itself. And he feels like all of those things are really coming together to produce their best wine yet. So lots of good wine still to come from this amazing winery. And as a Central Texas boy, it was really interesting for me when I went to Arche because as I pulled into the vineyard itself, I was amazed as I looked around at all the trees and the hills and everything there. I really felt like I was back in the hill country. So the terroir for this vineyard is really fantastic. And as I said, it's just an hour or so north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So if you live anywhere in that metroplex, you have no excuse. You have to get up north, make that short drive up north to St. Joe to really get to see Arche, this beautiful vineyard that they have, the property, these amazing wines. It's worth the drive. Now, when I went to visit, I was escorted into their cozy little barrel room and got to sit down with that previously aforementioned winemaker, Grayson Davies. And we got to talk a lot about their history and the grapes that they're growing there, the wines that they're making, all the awards that they're winning, all the fun stuff about Arche. And on top of it, he poured a few wines for us to taste during the interview. So I was able to enjoy and sip on some of these wines while he told us all about the dreams for Arche. So without further ado, let's go hear from him.
Howdy, Vine Trippers. Welcome to this episode. I'm here at Arche, which is in St. Joe in the North Texas area of the state. And they're located actually in the Texoma ABA here of the state. And so we're going to talk about everything that they have going on here. I'm here with their winemaker, Grayson Davies, and I'm excited to bring this to you today. So without further ado, let me turn my attention there. So Grayson, tell me a little bit about Arche, and first off, tell me about yourself. How did you get into the wine industry?
So I like to say I was drugged into it at a very early age.
Okay.
We're family owned and operated. So we bought the property with the intention of growing grapes and starting a winery in '99. And so I was, middle school at that time, 6th grade. And so me and my older brothers would come out here. And so we were just around it for a very long time. And then by the time I got into college, that's when you start to mature a little bit. And that's when I decided that I actually wanted to get into it and be a part of it. And went to Texas Tech and got a viticulture and enology degree from Tech back in December of 11.
Okay.
Been the winemaker since 2010, but, been involved with it for most of my life.
Absolutely. Forced labor, huh?
Yeah. At the beginning it was forced. Now, I do earn a paycheck and I love it.
But you have many years of experience despite your young age. So
Yeah. I was, I had a lot of, I was around it for a very long time. So even when I started my schooling for it, I was already very prepared. And, I was still going to school when I took over as winemaker. And I had one of my older brothers is a winemaker in the Paso area of California. And so, from as earlier in my winemaking career, I definitely always had someone to bounce ideas or questions off of. And I had a great professor at Tech as well, who was a good help. And, when you're in a family that loves wine, you just kind of absorb a lot about wine. So
kind of it's in your blood, you could say.
yeah, that's right.
Well, tell me about Arche for a moment then. So you started built in 1999 was when the property was purchased. Did you say your first goal was just to grow and sell grapes, or was there a winery in the works or in the plans from the start?
The intention was always to grow wine.
Okay.
So it was always to plant a vineyard, establish the vineyard, and then eventually start a winery and grow our wine.
Be a true vineyard-owned style.
Absolutely. And so 2007 is when Arche started.
Okay.
So prior to 7, we were selling our grapes. We actually sold most of our grapes to Brushy Creek Vineyards out of near Decatur, so Les Constable. And he passed a few years ago.
I was going to say,
They
they're
are
around anymore, are they?
still in operation to some degree.
They are.
Yes, they are. And unfortunately, I don't have time these days with family and full time doing everything. So I haven't been able to make it out there for a few years. But
I'm glad you're they're still in operation.
yeah. So in 2007, Arche started, and my dad was the winemaker. We were very small. We were still selling some of our grapes, but we started making wine. And then in 2009, we made a decision to start building out the winery in its current form. And then that's when my dad said, Grayson, you're going to school for this. I have no desire to make wine. I just want to enjoy good wine, and I want to grow good grapes in order to make that wine.
Okay.
So
You like the farming aspect.
winemaker. So be the winemaker. And I was like, okay, I am going to school for it and everything. And I transferred into Tech with knowing that they were starting that viticulture and enology program. And I was the first student to get that degree from Tech.
Wow. You were the very first class there.
Yeah. And I was like a full semester ahead of everybody because I had transferred in with so many credits. I took the 6.5 year college route. So, and I did not become a doctor or lawyer.
So 2007, when you kind of opened and got things going with your dad, and then 2010 is when you took over as winemaker.
2010, I took over as winemaker, and we went through an expansion at that point, and then just slowly grew from there. Built the current tasting room in 2014, added on in 2017,
Okay.
built the barrel room that we're in right now, I think 2 years ago,
Okay.
with the intention of continuing our growth. Our goal is to grow every grape at our vineyard.
Okay.
And
Through the state.
yeah, and we have, over the past 10 years, dedicated a lot of effort to get to that point. When you first start growing grapes, there's a lot of things you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And then eventually you find out some of those things that you're missing, some of those key points. Exactly. So we've redone a lot of our older vineyards. Now our oldest planted variety is Syrah that we planted in 2002, because the interesting thing about the property was that it was an old abandoned table grape vineyard.
Really?
Yeah, it was just great. Bit in the soil. Super coincidence. It planted a variety called Venus, which is a French-American hybrid. They planted it back in the 80s, did it for about 4 years, gave up because it's a lot of work. And Venus buds out extremely early, earlier than Chardonnay. I mean, beginning in late February, it's going to be budding out.
Yeah.
So they were getting frosted like crazy. So we pulled all that out, but still utilized the trellising and the infrastructure. Everything was extremely spaced out, spread out, rows, vine spacing. So starting in 2011, we started pulling out section by section our vineyard, our varieties that we had planted in 99, that was still using the old infrastructure, so that we could put in new infrastructure, change vine spacing, and everything. And so yours. Exactly. And we, that's when we made the determination of, okay, what varieties are we truly going to focus on? We've now been growing grapes for nearly, for a dozen years, nearly. What does the best out here? Now, it turns out many of the varieties that we planted, in fact, did do very well. Mainly Rhone varietals did very well out here. A lot of Syrah, Grenache. At one time, we also had some Carignan, Mourvedre, and now we have Mourvedre, Grenache, even more Syrah, and we planted Alicante Boucher. And then as far as whites go, Roussanne, Marsanne, Viognier. And then the one big kind of out of left field is Chardonnay. So we did grow Chardonnay in 99. It did well for us.
Okay.
We happened to find, I think, a very good clone and rootstock combination. And
It's really tricky.
Yeah, well, in some aspects, it can be like Cabernet in that Cabernet Sauvignon is in that it can grow in many different areas, but what's the fruit going to be? Chardonnay is extremely susceptible to some fungal issues, a lot of the mildews, downy mildew, powdery mildew, and it does bud out extremely early. So going back to kind of what Arche is about is trying to grow everything. Now, we have not had 100% estate vintage for most of our time. We've had to source some fruit just to get more production. Starting in 22, that was actually 100% estate year. I'm sorry. 22, we sourced Cabernet. 23 is 100% estate. 24, we sourced some Cabernet. So now Cabernet is the only grape that we source, just a couple tons, two or 3 tons of Cabernet, so we can make a particular blend. And in 21, the reason why that big shift happened, not only were certain varieties that we had been planting come online for us, but we put in a wind machine for frost protection. So we have not had a devastating frost, since 21, but that was Storm Uri, where it got absurdly cold throughout North Texas.
Sure.
It got that down to minus 15 Fahrenheit out here. It was pretty intense. But yeah, so that's what we're all about, is trying to grow wine here.
Yeah. To get everything here. And you've had these developments throughout the years to come to where you are today. And now you can say, aside of the small mix of the Cabernet, 100% estate-based winery, that's really accomplishing. That's a good thing. So I noticed as I was driving out here, based in Austin area, grown up in that area all of my life, used to the hill country. Most of my episodes typically are about hill country wineries only because that's my backyard. It's easy to get to. I do try to make these little trips as I can when I'm to some other regions. This is my first time really up here into the Texoma region, Texoma AVA. But one of the things I noticed in the area as I was driving in, how, especially the closer I got here, it reminded me of the hill country. Lots of rolling hills and the trees, everything. I felt like I would almost been transported back to the hill country at that point. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that Texoma had this kind of a, region here.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the AVA here and in the region you have in this for wine.
So once you go from the Austin area, you go up north 35, go through Dallas. Okay, come to Gainesville, which is 82, goes east and west from Florida to California. Go west on Gainesville, from Gainesville in 82, and you come to a little town called St. Joe. So from St. Joe is about, it's less than 20 miles from the Red River.
Yeah.
Okay, about 15 miles or so. So once you go, if you kind of form a triangle from St. Joe and then east and west, Nocona and Munster, kind of forming a triangle with St. Joe being its point, and then the base of that triangle being the Red River, that's a general area of this very specific, unique topography, the soil type. It's a nice sandy loam. The areas where there's greater erosion, there'll be more clay, but it's red. It's got that red tinge to it. It's where the Red River gets its name. We do get slightly greater diurnal swing than the surrounding areas. Our rainfall is less than the surrounding areas. The topography, the bluffs in the area disrupts storms as they pass through. Our average rainfall is less than the surrounding areas. Other than this year, we tend not to get hail, things like that. We are in Montague County, but this area that I'm describing also encompasses a little piece of Cook County as well. A lot of times, Montague County will get crazy, tornado warnings or something, and it's like, well, that's a different part. It's not where we are, which is nice,
Yeah.
And so I've just described what one could describe as a unique AVA.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Although we are located within a much larger AVA called Texoma, which extends another hour and a half to the east of us, which is nothing like it is now.
Right.
So when we start talking Texoma, so on our estate wines,
huge area.
yeah, when we have our estate wines, we can't put estate on the label because we're located within an AVA, but we're not going to put Texoma on our label.
Yeah.
Because Texoma, when you think Texoma, you think Lake Texoma.
Okay, right.
Which is a solid hour to the east of us. And the everything is different. Everything. So the individual who got Texoma passed really did not do their due diligence when they got it passed. And we actually attempted to get it stopped, but we missed the deadline basically. And this was back in the very early 2000s when Texoma was established, the AVA. Now, I have no problem with a large area, a large swath of Texoma AVA. I just have an issue with our specific area being located within Texoma because Texoma, an AVA name should identify a very specific area with very specific terroir.
So where is that on the bottle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are other wineries on the east part of Texoma AVA that have nothing similar with their terroir characteristics than they do here. And that is that should be the definition of an AVA. That's what it means. So that's why I get up in our it's unfortunate. And we've talked about
creating a nested AVA.
Exactly. And we've talked about that, but no one's got time for it, unfortunately. It's a lot of work. My dad actually attempted to do that a long time ago. And then we kind of dropped it because there aren't enough hours in the day. And
it's a full time. Yeah.
It, does it mean something? Yes. But when it means something, it's when we start getting people talking about AVAs in general. And then we kind of we really need to get on this. We need to really, and then, we go to sleep and wake up the next day and we have a whole list of things we have to do for that day. And, it's really on the bottom of the priority list. It's just, and AVAs back then would get approved a lot easier than they would now too.
Yeah.
Texoma AVA as a whole would most likely not be approved in its current form. But That was then Mrs. No.
It's history.
Yeah. And so and so when I talk about the taxonomy AVA, there are individuals, many wineries within the AVA who are like, come on, Grayson, you don't like stop talking smack about taxonomy AVA. I'm like, I'm not trying to talk smack about the whole thing. I'm just trying to talk smack about the fact that we are located within it because we just shouldn't be. Because we shouldn't be. And so I have no problem with many other people calling themselves Texoma, but there's a reason why we don't put Texoma on our label. It's because
It doesn't match.
it shouldn't be there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about the name of the winery, Arche. Where did that come from?
So Arche is a Greek word meaning beginning, leader, origin.
Okay.
And it's the root word, and archaic or archangel.
Yeah.
And so we felt like it was appropriate for what we were doing, being the first, vineyard and winery, in Montague County, starting something new, wanting to be a leader. We just felt like the name matched us.
Okay.
And as far as the label goes and the font and everything, we do have a backward C, and many times people ask me, so where'd the backward C, where did that come from?
Yeah.
There has to be some really significant meaning behind there.
So
So the font type is, this is actually called Fire of Yasgard is the font type, and Fire of Yasgard flips the C, and we're like, that's interesting. Well, we'll just keep it.
Okay.
And there's the story behind the backwards C. It was the font type we used, and we didn't want it. We didn't alter it.
Yeah.
We just decided to keep it.
Kind of looks cool, so decided to keep it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder what the reasoning was for it to flip the C in the
Well, that font type, a lot of the letters are weird.
Yeah.
We just happen to, Arcade doesn't have any of the weird letters other than the C. But like a U looks like a V, and
I wonder if that's like if it's called Fire of the Asgard, if that's like something Nordic or something that maybe there's a reason that I don't know.
I have not looked into it, to be honest with you.
My wandering mind. I'm always curious about interesting things. All right. So tell me a little bit let's talk about the fruit for just a moment. So you've talked about the vineyard you have here. How many acres do you have?
We have about 8 acres planted.
Okay.
But we got a lot of room to grow.
Right. So you have room to possibly plant more. You're not done planting or anything.
Basically, the only limitation is labor and money, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work, in finding enough labor. That's just an issue with any small business. But
not just to plant it, but to maintain it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of care goes into it. Pruning takes a long time, and we cane prune everything, which is a little bit more detailed pruning method rather than spur and cordon pruning. And so it's not as easy as like just getting bodies out there to prune the vineyard, because those decisions mean so much in that vine's life.
Yeah.
Not just for the growing season, but the wrong cut can cause the demise of a vine.
Wow. Especially some that are 23 years old, that those Syrah vines and things like that.
And the thing is too, a lot of bad cuts during pruning cause a slow motion death of a vine. They'll cause a decline, because one of the issues that we have growing grapes throughout Texas, a little bit less so in West Texas, are the trunk diseases. So these are fungal issues, pathogens that are very slow moving throughout the vine and cause like a 10-year decline.
Yeah.
And so that's when you start seeing a vineyard after about 10 years, 8 to 12 years, all of a sudden their production starts dropping, vines start dying. And so if you don't correct for that, replant, or, plant your dead vines, pull out vines, replant. 15 years down the road, from 0 to 15, all of a sudden 15 years later, all of a sudden you're at 50% production, and it's because of those lessons you never learned. So
wow. So you have to kind of stay on top of production for every single vine, almost kind of monitor and see how it's doing, if it's losing or things like that.
Yeah, well, it really comes down to just proper vine maintenance, pruning. I mean, you can't talk about how important pruning is. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So what we tapped on some of the varietals that you have planted here. I know you talked about Syrah and then GSM stuff. Anything else and the Chardonnay? Anything else you typically have planned here? Or?
For the future, we would like to get Cabernet back in the ground. We used to have a large planting of Cabernet, but it was grown on an part of our vineyard that was suited for early budding varieties because it was at the top of a hill, the most protected from frost. Cabernet buds out extremely late. That's where our late harvest. It's where our Syrah needs to be. Our Syrah is planted on the bottom of the hill. And
That's
so,
that hindsight we talked about.
exactly. And so we ended up planting in the area that we had our 1,000 Cabernet vines. We now have about 4,000 vines of. We have Syrah, Alicante, and then Mourvèdre and Grenache.
Okay.
And at the top of the hill is our Syrah, then followed by our Alicante, and then followed by Grenache, which are more earlier. And then as it goes down the hill, it's Mourvèdre.
Okay. Interesting. So when I came in down the drive, those vines, when you first turn,
when you make that 90-degree turn
right there,
when you make that 90-degree turn, still outside our game fence, you're looking at Syrah, and then Alicante, then Grenache, and then Mourvèdre. And then there's a little separation, and then it's more Syrah. And then the road that you take that goes through the vineyard, Syrah on both sides. So Syrah is our largest minority. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We talked already about, so you get a little bit of Cab Sauv for your blends, but otherwise everything is basically estate. Do you do any kind of single varietals of? I know you mentioned Alicante Bouschet a moment ago. A lot of times that can be used as a cutting grape or a blending grape. Or do you do any single varietals of that sometimes?
Alicante, for it to be a single varietal, you better have a really long-term cellaring program.
Yeah,
because Alicante is extremely, it doesn't have a lot of primary kind of characteristics up front. That wine has to lay down for a really long time for those characteristics to really come out. Alicante, it's not made for it. It's not made for that. It's made to help out all the other guys. For structure and color. And so now everything, our reds, it's like Alicante there, little Alicante there. We make straight varietals of Syrah, as far as reds go, Syrah, Mourvèdre. And then this year, it's 24 vintage. For the first time, we're making just a single barrel because it all went into our GSM blend that we call Apex. But we had enough, I have one barrel of Grenache. Okay. And then the way that our Mourvèdre worked out, we have one barrel of Mourvèdre, but we usually do a single varietal of Mourvèdre and Syrah. And then we do a couple blends. And then on our whites, we do single varietals of our Chardonnay and our Roussanne. And we're planting a little bit more Viognier so that we can get enough to make a straight varietal of Viognier, because we did that in 21. The crazy storm Uri that got absurdly cold. The only production that we got on anything was Roussanne did a decent job, surprisingly, and then Viognier produced a little bit for us. That was basically it. And so we had to source all of our fruit that year from the High Plains. But that Viognier was so wonderful.
Yeah.
Did a barrel fermentation, about an 8 months on in New French Oak, and I haven't forgotten that. So we'd like to bring that back. But typically our Viognier goes in with a Roussanne Marsanne Viognier blend, like a nice Chateauneuf du Pont Blanc style, which is what we call precedence.
Okay.
And sometimes if it works out, I always like to put a couple of percentages in with our Syrah during fermentation.
Okay. Well, as the winemaker, this leads me to my next question. What are some of your favorite varietals to work with and your favorite wines to make?
So that's a question you get asked a lot, and or at least I do. And I think most winemakers, I assume, would answer it a similar way. The varieties that I like to work with the best are the ones that make the best wine.
There you go.
Right? Yeah. And so I really like working with Syrah because I really like our Syrah.
Yeah.
And I really like making Chardonnay because I think we make a very good Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that I talk a lot about all these Rhone varietals, and we have the heat that we have, and then we just have this random but then Chardonnay. So I think why we can grow Chardonnay well out here, we do have a good clone and root stock blend combination, but it buds out extremely early, which is typically negative, right? Because we have spring frost. But with our wind machine, we've really been able to eliminate that almost entirely. It does such a good job. And in case, the way the wind machine works, you're basically stirring the warm air that's up high with the cold air down low. Because that's the type of frost that we get out here.
Settle at the
Yeah, you get inversion layers. And so at ground level, at the top of the vineyard, it could be 34, and at the bottom, it's 24. And at the top of the wind machine, it could be 44. And so it'll just, when it turns on, it stirs it all up and brings the temperature up. So the Chardonnay buds out very early, and it's typically always fully morphologically ripe at the very beginning of August. So it's not sitting and just baking on the vine, stress ripening like some other varieties are.
Okay.
And so its chemistry is always good. Its pH is always better than all of our other estate varieties. And so I think, interestingly enough, even though it gets very hot out here, it's fully ripened. And it's not that it's in a shortened growing season, but it buds out so early too. So
It's in its prime at that point, saying, hey,
Yeah.
pick me.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go.
We're like, great.
Is that usually the first one you all harvest?
Only in unique years. So the Roussanne, although it buds out, weeks after the Chardonnay, it always ends up catching up. Those vines just aren't quite as beefy, if you will. And we've been working on the Roussanne vines, but in the really hot years, the Roussanne tends to ripen its fruit quicker. And so there have been, I think, the 22 and the 23 vintage both or was it 23 and 24?
6-1 up to the
Yeah. The Roussanne was actually harvested either the same weekend or one weekend before the Chardonnay, but typically it's at least 2 weeks after.
Okay.
But it just depends on those really, really hot years.
Yeah.
The Roussanne tends to, it kind of does like a really rapid, which is not a good thing. Especially, it's not as bad for a white variety. In red varieties, you can't have that because that's just stress ripening, and you're not getting any development of the anthocyanins, the tannins. That's when you have bitter, underripe tannins. But you're like, oh, I'm at 26% sugar. I need a harvest. My acid's gone. I'm starting to get shrivel on the fruit like crazy. But if you crunch down on those skins and the seeds, you still get bitterness. And that's when you don't have proper ripeness, but you got to pick the fruit. A lot of that is with night. Most of that has to deal with hotter nighttime temperatures. So although we have a greater diurnal swing, the temperature difference between day and night here than we do, like for instance, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, once you start going south, it does cool off a little bit, but it's still not, it's not Paso where it's 100 degrees during the day and 55 at night. That's just not going to happen. It's 100 degrees during the day and like, oh, it got down to 72.
Wow.
cold front came
Yeah,
through.
exactly. And so with those nighttime temperatures being elevated, if it cooled off at night, it could get 100 degrees during the day.
Sure.
And you'll still get proper development in that fruit. But if you have really warm nighttime temperatures, the vine never really shuts down. It starts utilizing that acid in the grapes. You don't get the tannin ripeness, maturation. And so it's not so much about daytime. It's more about nighttime.
Gotcha. Well, we talked a moment ago about Viognier, you did. But as a winemaker, are there any varietals that you really haven't worked with very much that you've always wanted to?
I would be interested. Part of me, I might have two answers. Because we grow Chardonnay, if I had more time, I would love to do a small method champenois program, and I would love to let's grow a row of Pinot Noir just so we can really make like a Dom style 50-50. I think they're about 50-50 between Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. That would be interesting.
Fun.
Yeah. We actually have one vine of Pinot. And then, I've always really enjoyed Petite Syrah.
Okay.
I've always enjoyed those wines. Yes. I think even a mediocre Petite Syrah is better than a lot of mediocre other wines.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. And so I'd be interested in that. And the only other thing, maybe Cab Franc, because Cab Franc can handle higher temperatures and can still get good development. And so I'd be interested in that. But being that we're the size that we are, we kind of got to limit what you do.
Yeah.
And so, but be focused before you can open up. And that's why a lot of our varieties are made for blending purposes. And we just because we grow a single variety doesn't mean we're going to make a single varietal of that wine. But I would love to grow some other, maybe a couple others, down the road.
Sure. Well, what are some of your most popular wines with your customers? Speaking of, you poured something here. We got a little rosé. What do we have here?
Yeah, so this is our Texas Rose, and I actually poured it from our growler. We do have a growler program here at Arche.
Yeah.
So our rosé, and then a couple of our white wines, we will bottle a portion of it, and we will keg a portion of it.
Okay.
So we have a growler program, so you can buy a growler and get refills. Get refills at the tap. They are not endless. You do have to pay for them. Not CCs.
Yeah.
And so rosé is always one. And so we do a Saunier rosé. So Saunier meaning to bleed. So we always bleed the juice of all the red varieties that we do, minus the Alicante.
Okay.
And so it's always going to be a blend of all of the reds that we do. So this is basically a GSM
Very light.
plus Cabernet that we source. We did source Cabernet from the Bingham Vineyard out in West Texas, and we got it hand harvested as well. So we were able to Saunier that fruit. So the rosé is probably one of our most popular. We always try to get it bottled and ready by February, and we will be sold out of this by September, which is perfect for rosé. You don't want to try to
want it for the summer, young.
Exactly.
To be there in the summer.
Yeah, and we're not trying to hold on to a rosé. When someone says, "Oh, I still have one of your 22 rosés," I'm like, "Well, just pour it out."
Exactly.
I didn't make it for you to be able to hold on to it, And so you want to preserve fresh fruitiness, and you also don't want to keep a wine in a keg for a super long time because it doesn't breathe at all. It gets zero oxygen, so you don't want to worry about it going reductive or anything on you. But we always bottle part of it and then keg part of it as well. And we only do that with the rosé and the whites. That way, because that reds just aren't going to mature at all. Being in keg. So the rosé is always a good one. I would say our Chardonnay and our Syrah are our most popular. And we also make a very popular wine, Ryan's Red, and that's why we still source Cabernet. So it's a blend of our estate Syrah and then Cabernet we bring in. And named after my late brother Ryan, passed back in 2005, and he basically single-handedly planted all the Syrah, our original Syrah out here. My dad loves telling the story because he basically got here late, and my dad was all mad that he didn't help plant, and so he was like, "Fine, I got it. I'll do it myself." And he went out there and put all those vines in the ground.
What a tribute.
Yeah. So Ryan's Red is always a blend of Syrah and Cab, and that's the one reasons why we still source Cabernet and why we would like to get it back in the ground eventually. So we do have a handful of Cabernet vines, but just not enough for the production. So. And that's always like a fan favorite, if you will. And we don't always have it available because it usually sells very quickly. And yeah. So I would say those wines in particular. And, we make a really nice Roussanne. But when someone sees Chardonnay or Roussanne on a label, or on a wine list, they're like, "Oh, let me try your Chardonnay." And then when someone says, "Oh, Chardonnay, I don't like that," they're just like, "Well, now you have to try it." Exactly. Because there's, ABC or anything but Chardonnay. And so, if somebody someone just likes white wine at all, when they say they don't like Chardonnay, well, I say, "Well, we just haven't tried the right one." I mean, they're all over the map.
It's one of the most diverse white grapes in the styles that can be made in.
It has no really strong inherent varietal characteristics. So it's just like where it's grown, what the winemaker does, how it was aged. We'll just change it completely.
Barreled? Was it stainless? What did you do with it?
Yeah. And stylistically with all of our whites, are all done with oak to a degree. Most of them are barrel fermented.
Okay.
In new French oak. So every barrel at Arche starts its life off fermenting a white wine, and then as early as 3 months later, that wine will be taken out of barrel, and then it'll become a red wine barrel.
Red barrel.
Yeah, unless it's a reserve, like for instance, our reserve Chardonnay, we'll keep it in barrel for longer. We still have the only 24 white we still have is our. Well, actually, it's right here. Is our 23 Chardonnay reserves that we barrel fermented it in new French oak, took it out of that, and then put it in a once used barrel that we got from a winery in Napa that did a Chardonnay fermentation and took it out of barrel, and then we got that barrel. So that barrel's only ever had Chardonnay in it, and it was just like a once use, and then now we have our Chardonnay Reserve aging, continuing to age in that.
I mean, Chardonnay can handle that extended barrel time. So,
and then, but yeah, big fan of Syrah. Always love it. Even in bad years, our Syrah is our best. It's going to be good.
Yeah. And you process all of these wines here on site?
Yeah. So the crush pad is just on the other side of the door, and it's we're in a tight space.
Yeah.
So we get a lot out of a minimal amount of area. So our production line actually makes almost like a U. Okay. Just because we're out of room, we got to U it. And we got just
that process follow.
Yeah. Last yeyear we brought in a shaker table. We're like, okay, the line was already taking up the entire space. So how are we also going to add this, 14-foot shaker tables to across? Oh, we'll just make it a U. So yeah, exactly. So, but it works out. And now the barrel room allowed us to do our barrel fermentations in here. It allowed us to expand our barrel program. And, every year we're adding about 10 more barrels, and we're going on about a 3-year rotation. So we don't have currently any neutral barrel. So after about 3 years, we're getting rid of them and continuing to increase our barrel count. Yeah. And then the winery is now just where red wine fermentations happen in 1.5-ton macro bins, with heat exchange plates and everything. Yeah. And then as soon as primary fermentation slows down, we then move them outside so we can keep heat in them. So it'll be 100 degrees outside, but all of our red wine, in September and October, our red bins are actually all outside. So to try to keep them close to 80 degrees to continue proper extraction.
Okay. So here at Arche, do you do any kind of attractions or events or things that people come to? I know you mentioned before we started our interview here in the barrel room that it's kind of set up with this table right now. You're all having an event here tomorrow. So what types of attractions do y'all do here at the winery?
Yeah. So we are going to be doing a 24 vintage barrel sampling in here, and for about 30 people. And so we are going to open up all of our 24 whites that we have bottled that are not released. Yeah. The only 24 that we're not going to be trying is our rosé. But that's been out and available for many months now. And then we pulled samples of all of our 24 reds and our 24 Chardonnay Reserve, which is actually right here.
Ooh, thank you.
And so we do some things like that. We just want people to
preview. Exactly.
And it's pretty cool because the 24 vintage is going to be our best vintage by far. Yeah. So that in 24, we really implemented a lot of, I did as far as everything from determining harvest, and actually from a vineyard management standpoint, we felt like a lot of things became understood and a lot of things were implemented starting in 24, really came together in 24. And then from a winemaker's perspective, I implemented quite a few protocol changes when it came to fermentations and everything I was doing. Yeah, and I feel like it really showcased itself in a very good way. So we're letting people try our 24 vintages, and we're gonna have charcuterie and things like that, and that's the take it as in. And then but on as far as why do people come out to Arche? I would hope, and our goal and our plan has always been to make it all about the wine. Right. And of course, we want there to be a lovely environment, a beautiful area. When we first started from 07 until 14, the winery was a little metal room with no windows and doors and everything. And, my mom always jokes, she's like, gosh, I wish I could just have a winery and grow grapes and make wine and just not have to have a tasting room. Yeah. Not have to. No, she wants to, and my mom Amy, she is, if you had to put the term, I think vineyard manager on anyone, it would be her. Okay. She really knows her stuff, and she's the one who makes the decisions about pruning and things like that.
She's the mama bear for the wine, for the vineyard.
Yeah. And then my dad loves being out in the vineyard, and he's an engineer by trade. Earlier on in his life, he was an electrical engineer, and he's very, very mechanical. My parents are both mechanical. They both used to road race motorcycles, and that's how they met.
Oh, wow. Road race. Well, that explains the two motorcycles I saw when I pulled up. Okay, yeah. Interesting.
And as far as why people come here. You know, we really want to make it about the wine, and we love hearing, hey, your vineyard looks beautiful. And I can say, oh, it looks overgrown right now because it's rained so much. But these, by the way, these samples were poured 2 days ago, and I didn't get a chance to try them, and so I was like, well, let me go ahead and do it because our main tasting room guy and my mom actually went through because we were trying to determine the order in which we were going to be trying them this weekend. So this is our reserve Chardonnay right here.
Wow.
All right, let me try it with you.
Yeah, that's nice.
So this will probably come out of barrel by the end of the month, probably right before harvest. And we just did 2 barrels of this. So with Chardonnay, we started playing with cutting off malolactic fermentation. And our regular Chardonnay, our non-reserve, we probably allowed it to do just about 50% ml before we cut it off. The reserve, it's closer to probably about 75.
Yeah.
It was getting pretty close to being done. But we've started playing with cutting off ML because we used to just try to make, all of the whites just complete because it's just one less thing you have to worry, and yeah. And, but we don't have a lot of acid to begin with. Why you want to use it all up? But the Chardonnay, I think, is always good to have a little bit of ML in there for sure.
It does give a great mouthfeel to it.
Yeah. Yeah. But and all of our whites are done aged surely. Okay. So even if we're taking them out of barrel, we'll actually try to pull out lees.
Okay.
Even if they're going into like a neutral vessel, like a flex tank or in stainless, we'll try to pull some of the lees. We're not looking for clarification immediately and to continue that surly aging.
Yeah.
And then everything is done batonnage as well. So we'll actually, during fermentation and for post-fermentation, we're slowly stirring those lees in the barrel to try to get those lees back incorporated in there. And to try to just create a little bit more mouthfeel, more body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For listeners that may not know, surly, that term means on the dead yeast cells, basically, as the yeast is eating the sugars and converting to alcohol, and all that, the yeast cells end up kind of forming on the bottom. That's the lees. And by letting the wine rest on those lees, it allows for a fuller mouthfeel, kind of a fuller body sometimes. So.
Yeah. So it releases polysaccharides and there's the scent. And manoproteins. So you can actually get protein and cold stabilization from the lees.
Okay.
So we do not bentonite any of our whites for protein stability.
Yeah.
Bentonite is used primarily just to ensure protein stability in that wine. And because if a wine is not stable and there are proteins are very reactive. So they'll start sticking to things, form a haze in the wine. And but lees naturally release manoproteins. In fact, you can buy products that are manoproteins, just manoproteins in themselves to add stability to a wine, and they can help contribute to cold stabilization so that they don't form crystals on your fridge and stuff like that. But yeah, so going back to the original question, it's really just all been about the wine. It's all about the grape. It's all about the grape because ultimately that means the wine because it's all about the grape.
I'm sure listeners and watchers are getting excited now to come check out Arche and see what it's all about. So let's talk about what they might expect if they come in for a tasting.
Yeah.
So if they come in for a tasting, do they choose their own wines for a tasting, or is it a set flight of wines? And how much does it cost? What does that look like?
So when you drive in the beautiful property that is Arche, right now it's a little hot and humid, but anyway, you come in through the vineyard. And the tasting room is right there. It's all glass. So you get to sit there and enjoy the view. We also have a patio. And we offer tasting flights for $18. So you try 4 wines and we have them set either a red tasting, a white, or a blend.
Okay.
And then everything is available by the glass. And then anything can be enjoyed at your table as well. And of course, wines to go. Okay. And then we do offer a wine club. And tastings are complimentary for wine club members, and a lot of some of the events we do out here, we do a couple wine club events as well because we want people to understand that wine club is very important, and so a lot of times we try to show our gratitude for that. Yeah,
absolutely. Do they need reservations for the tastings?
Do not need reservations.
Okay, so walk-ins
unless you are like more than 8 people, I believe.
Okay.
That information is listed on our website.
Yeah.
But for large groups, we do say, please
You little heads up.
give some heads up. Exactly.
Do you have a maximum group size beyond just giving reservation notice?
Well, since we say give us a notice if it's
Uh-huh.
larger than a certain size, if all of a sudden somebody says I'm going to bring 80 people, we're like, well, then you're going to have to rent the space out.
Okay.
You know. So,
Yeah, so that can be addressed during the reservation
absolutely.
time.
Yeah, because we offer different things for larger groups and things like that, and we do have a small food menu, something that COVID brought on.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you couldn't be open unless you
were serving something like
a
that.
restaurant.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I couldn't get COVID if you served food.
Exactly. Food kept you from getting COVID.
Yeah.
What types of food options do you have? Like little small bites, charcuterie,
Yeah, it's like
things like that?
flatbread, charcuterie, just on this.
Can people bring their own food in, or do they?
We do not allow outside food.
Gotcha.
And then we also, starting over 10 years ago, we started partnering with Dude Sweet Chocolate, which is a chocolatier located in downtown Dallas.
Okay.
Chef Clapner, she is the chocolatier and the owner, and we've always carried her chocolates. We do events with her sometimes, and it sounds weird talking a lot about chocolate, but she has awesome chocolates. Yeah, and she's in the Deep Ellum. Is it Deep Ellum? Somewhere in downtown Davies, and Bishop Arts District, I think. Okay, I think she's right around the Bishop Arts District, and
The listeners got to look that up. What are your operating hours?
we're open Thursday through Sunday.
Okay.
We open up at noon. We close at 6. Sundays we close at 5.
A little early on Sundays. Okay.
Yeah.
What about if somebody wants to come, but they got their stroller full of kids and things like that? Is it 21 and up, or are kids allowed, family friendly?
So what we like to say is the environment that we do, we are not a daycare, right? However, if your children are well behaved, they're more than welcome.
Right.
Keep them on a leash.
Yeah. There's no playscape in the middle of the vines. So
Yeah. So no, but we allow all ages.
Okay.
But we do ask that kids stay with their parents at their table.
What about fur babies or things like that? If people have pets or things they want to bring?
We have a patio.
Okay.
They must stay on a leash.
Okay. So outside, but they can come and
Mhm.
as long as they're on a leash and everything.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same thing. Well-respected kids, well-respected pets.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fully welcome. What would you say are kind of your busier and slower times? What's the best time for somebody to come visit?
Anytime. I would say that as far as the tasting room goes, we're busier when the weather is better.
Yeah.
Yeah. The nastier the weather is, well, we're not going to have as much foot traffic coming in. It's kind of directly related to the weather. I can say that right now, veraison is well underway, and so the vines are full. The red grapes are purple, and
Yeah.
the white grapes are starting to turn, and so they look very, very nice. And then, sometimes we'll get people coming out in November, and they'll go, "My God, what happened to your vines? Are they all dead?" I'm like,
They don't understand the process.
it's not an evergreen.
Exactly.
They're not. It's not a
What
pine
happened
tree.
to the trees in your front
Yeah.
yard? Are they all dead?
Exactly. They're like, no. We cut them back, and in the spring, they're like, "What happened to your vines? They're all gone." I mean, there was a fluffy the last time. There's just a trunk, and then that's it. Like, yes, we prune them back. About 90% of the vine's weight gets pruned back every year.
Yes. It's called the life cycle.
Yes.
Well, tell me about your wine club. So we talked a little bit about wine club events and things like that. Give me the details on the wine club if somebody wanted to join the wine club.
So we do have a sign up information online. We also have, you can do that when you visit the tasting room. So wine club, you get complimentary tastings, you get discounts on wine purchasing. So we offer 20% off on all bottle sales, and we offer some other benefits as far as ticketed events, preferred pricing, and things like that. And some of the events we do, they're geared just complimentary for wine club members. So there are some wine club exclusive wines. If they're smaller production wines, we're like, we have just enough of this wine just for wine club. So it is just for wine club.
Yeah.
And some cool perks like that. We do a couple wine dinners a year out here. And so you get, better pricing on those sorts of events.
Okay. And like we said, you can sign up online or in the tasting room itself.
Yeah, that's right. And we basically offer, it's 3 times a year, April, September, and December. 4 bottles each. Yeah, 4 bottles each. So that's 12 bottles a year, and you get 20% off on those wines.
So if somebody is getting excited and they'd love to taste your wines, but for whatever reason they can't get here to the tasting room, do you do any kind of distribution, or do you sell on your website or things like that? In other words, are there ways that people could taste your wines without necessarily getting here?
Yeah, so we actually sell. This is our Syrah Reserve, our 24, and this is a very long way away from being out of barrel. And there are a few percentages of Alicante in this wine.
Okay. Yeah. Colors are very, very deep.
So we self-distribute just to a handful of places, mainly just locally.
Yeah.
And we do ship to 37 different states.
Okay.
But what I always like to tell our customers who are, especially from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, hey, if you really like our wine, you can always ask whatever beverage store you go to or restaurant.
Yes.
Tell them to carry Arche wine.
And it's for Texas wine.
Yeah, and that is, and unfortunately, and we are carried in a handful of places in the surrounding area. Unfortunately, there are many restaurants who pride themselves on being locally driven and will not listen to a Texas winery. They're not interested at all in carrying a Texas wine product.
Even though they feel like,
Even though they are 100%
Farm to table
locally,
kind of
farm
thing.
to table kind of thing, it's accept the wine, which is unfortunate. And I've heard other people talk about this. In fact, I always remember Daniel Collada talking to on a podcast actually, and a major point he had was, what's one thing that needs to change in the industry in Texas, and it is the onus needs to be on the beverage business owner and the restaurant owner to be if you pride yourself on being locally driven, then that includes the wine, because the wine is, that is farm to table. That is farming, winemaking
product.
It is everything. And it is so locally driven. It is terroir driven. And so especially if there is a winery and perhaps they just haven't had an opportunity to try good Texas wines. And I think there's that long-term stigma that over the past 15 years, and I saw it when I used to go to restaurants to get Arche wines carried. The beginning of our conversation and the end of the conversation were like night and day. Because the end of the conversation, they said, I thought Texas had terrible wine. I didn't know. Right. I didn't know that Texas made good wine. And so, I changed a few souls, but
God bless you.
Yeah, right. But there are so many restaurant owners and the people that make those decisions in restaurants who are I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. They are not aware, but if you pride yourself on being a locally driven place, then that should include the wine. And there is a lot of small producers that unfortunately do not go through the distribution system. Most of the producers in Texas do not go through the distribution center because the way that system is set up, if I am not producing an uber amount of this particular wine to where I can sell it for a very small amount, so much goes into making a bottle of wine as a small vineyard and winery that's why you're not seeing my wine, at a distributor.
Yeah.
It's because I can't.
It doesn't make financial sense for you to do that. Yeah.
Now we can sell direct to businesses. And so, but the onus needs to be on those owners and the people that make the decisions to carry those local products and those local wineries.
It's so important for people to ask for Texas wines. Every restaurant they go to, every store they go to, ask for it. Because as that demand builds there, that tide's going to begin to roll.
And unfortunately, but then now fortunately, a lot of Texas wineries weren't always Texas fruit, but now you're seeing that less often.
Yeah.
More and more wineries, even the larger guys, everybody, there's so much more fruit that's being produced in Texas to where, there's not a really big excuse to be bringing in outside fruit. And so you're more, the chances are now if you're getting a Texas wine, it truly is a Texas product.
Yeah.
And that there's been some individuals who have fought, and there's been a lot of consternation about that and a lot of headbutting over that issue of Texas fruit, Texas wineries, a Texas fruit and everything. And I'm sure
There's a lot of political stuff with all that.
there's a lot of political stuff about that. That's a whole nother conversation,
It is.
but anyway.
Well, and one of the things that, again, I just feel like the onus really needs to be on my listeners and my watchers and the people who are wanting Texas wine to ask for that. And I love that the Texas Wine Lover website, even if you don't know how to do that or what to do, the Texas Wine Lover website has a template that you can download with little cards that you can write your favorite winery on there and say, please carry wines from this particular winery. You just give that, or just leave it on the table or give it to the manager or whatever. I mean, there are a lot of ways to get your voice heard, and it's got to be grassroots, I think, to really help build that need and that desire. But cool. So if people wanted to taste it and you can't get here, check the website, order from the website, and you can have that shipped. So that's a good option there. So we talked a little bit about the progression that you've made here at Arche over the years of starting with just planting grapes and then building the winery part and then adding on and these different things you've added over time. What are your plans for future growth? Do you want to add more things on, or besides, we talked a little bit about planting other varietals, but do you have plans for future growth?
I think the plan should always be for growth.
Okay.
At least when, we're small, and it would always be nice to be less small. So much goes into it. You never want to outgrow yourself. You never want to put yourself in a bind, it's only money though, right?
Right.
So, yes, we would like to grow. And fortunately, our property has room for growth as far as, facilities, capital improvements, and even vineyard growth. So I think the plan would always to do that. I'm second generation. I hope that my children would be the third generation involved. And so that means growth. And so I think you have to have the mindset of that,
leaving that legacy as it goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, our vineyard is still not at 100% production. You're always looking at okay, some of our younger vines are still coming online. Some of our older plantings, okay, we've figured out some of the mistakes we're doing. And so we're getting those, trying to get that up to 100%. And so just naturally we're growing a little bit every year just as we get more production. But it's not like we're closing our tasting room because we don't have any wine to sell.
Right.
We're trying to meet our demand. But we always try to increase our supplies so that we can, entice more people to come out. And ultimately it's just, as I've mentioned multiple times, it's about the wine. And so we hope that when you come and visit us, that you come back and visit us.
Yeah. And your growth should be kind of like that ripening of the Cabernet Sauvignon, not some quick soup
Exactly.
thing, but that slow, steady
Absolutely.
growth as it ripens. Same thing with your growth. So cool. Well, there are a lot of great places in Texas that people can go to get wine. So tell me a little bit about why you think Arche is a little different, or what do you think sets Arche apart that people would say, I got to get there and try some of that wine?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways that a winery could go about answering that question.
Yeah.
Right. You could have a shtick, right?
Yeah.
If we have a shtick, I guess it's for we do everything right here. We grow it right here and we make a really good wine. Like that's what we're trying to do, right? And so, we don't have a crazy funny name. It's an interesting name.
Yeah.
People ask about it. That's not necessarily why we chose it. We chose it for the meaning of it. And ultimately, we want you to know that you're coming to a nice facility that's beautiful, because you are in the middle of a vineyard and you see everything right there. When our patio butts up to our crush pad. So when we're in production, you're seeing everything right there. You're seeing how the sausage is made. It's right there.
You make sausage here too?
Yeah, right. And so there is that level of intimacy with how you're seeing everything being done. When you come and visit Arche, you are going to see a Davies when you are here.
Okay.
Whether it's me, it's my mom, it's my dad. You're going you're going to see one of us. You're going to see us walking to the tasting room. You're going to see us working in the vineyard. You were going to see one of us.
Yeah.
And so it's not, it's as far from corporate as you can get.
Okay.
You know, it is a small family, family run and managed and owned winery and vineyard. Not, you know, we all obviously have non-family members working here as well. You know, and so
They're part of the field.
exactly. And so we call, you know, our wine clubs Club 228 Wagner Road is our address. You know, it's like, be a part of the family. You know, it's our home. And so, you know, I've said it many times throughout this conversation, but it's really, it's all about the final product. It's all about the wine. It's all about the grape. We sincerely care about what we're putting in the bottle, what we're putting in your glass. We sincerely care about each and every one of those vines, about the grape, because it is all about the grape. It's the only way that we can make, you know, the quality of wine that we can. And we make it so that you can enjoy it. And we hope that you think that it's worth it. We think it is. And we want you to come back. You know, we want you to join the wine club. And, you know, it's why we got into this business, so we could grow good wine and we could have people enjoy it.
It's all about that grape, no trouble. Oh, sorry. With all apologies to Megan Trainor, I got a little bit caught up in tasting some of that great wine that they're producing there. Grayson does not lie. It is about the grapes and the wines that they're producing there. They really speak for themselves. And you really must go visit them. Now, as always, before you go, make sure you check out their website. It's pretty easy. It's archewines.com. That's ARCHEWINES.com. And on their website, you're going to find great information about all those wines. You can even purchase them to be shipped to you right there on the website. Information about some of the awards that they've won. More information about their wine club, that 228 club that he mentioned in the podcast. And then more details on what to expect when you go visit. And one of the things I really appreciated about it, especially if you're traveling up that area to go see Arche, they actually have a link there with a listing of a lot of close places to stay. So if you're looking for a place to stay when you go to visit, they've got you covered with all of that. You can also find things like their event calendar on their website and even job opportunities if you're thinking you might want to get a career into the wine industry and get a job there at Arche. And don't forget, when you go to see them, make sure you tell them you heard about them on this podcast, Texas Under Vine. Now, after we got done talking with the interview, it was time to go tour the wine. And what a grand tour it was. As we sat down in the tasting room to go through a standard tasting and taste some of these great offerings, Grayson, of course, had to pour me a few extra samples, a few different things, so I could get a really good picture of this amazing wine they're putting out there at Arche. They were really tasty wines, and in my opinion, a great example of North Texas terroir and great winemaking skills. It was also fascinating to me to be able to taste such a great Chardonnay. That's not something you get to see in Texas that often. There are not too many places in Texas that are growing and producing fantastic Chardonnay, and Arche is one of those. However, the time came where I had to choose my favorite so that I could take home a wine library bottle for this particular episode. And there were so many choices, I had to settle down and pick one. I finally settled in on a white wine. This is their 2022 Precedent, and it is a great example of, say, a Chateauneuf de Pape Blanc. It is a mixture, it's a Southern Rhone blend mixture of 3 different white grapes, which are Roussanne, Marsanne, and Viognier. Now, this particular wine was beautiful on the nose. It had a lot of honeysuckle and like Meyer lemon and things like that on the nose. And on the palate, I was getting some real stone fruit like apricot and peach, and still some of that lemon flavor coming through. But it had amazing acidity, very well balanced. I was thinking, man, this would really pair well with maybe some pasta with a white sauce, like an Alfredo or something like that. Oh, that would go so well. But heck, this thing would drink so great on its own. It's a great sipper. So you make sure when you go see Arche that you check out this Precedent. And it's a great bottle, great wine to drink. So that became my wine library bottle for this episode. Now, as I wandered around the vineyard, sipping some of this great Texas wine, I was able to check out the motorcycles that they had out front. You may remember from the interview that Grayson talked about how his parents actually met racing motorcycles. They were in the tasting room when I was doing my tasting, and his dad actually walked me up and down the wall showing me these amazing photos they had of their motorcycle racing career and talked about how they met. It was really fun to see that light in his eyes as he talked about all of that and that passion they had. But as I sipped this wine and listened to great stories about these motorcycles and all the fun stuff here at Arche, the sun began to set, and it was time for me to move on because I have other great wine destinations I need to visit and bring that info to you as well in other episodes. So before I go, however, I do have a special request. I would like to invite you to support the podcast. If you are enjoying the content that I bring you every couple of weeks of these great wineries throughout Texas, I hope you've gotten to go visit some of these wineries that you've listened to the episodes for and support our Texas wine industry. Well, this podcast, as I bring you this information, isn't free, and I do support it out of my own pocket. I do have a Patreon subscription service, so for those of you that would like to support the podcast, I do have a handful of Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much for what you give to help cover some of my hosting costs. And there's a lot of expenses that go into producing a podcast like this: equipment, traveling fees, all kinds of stuff like that. And I do foot it out of my pocket, but I would like to maybe cover some of those costs if possible. So if you would be interested in helping to support the podcast, even if it's just for a few dollars, I would take one-time donations, or you can subscribe to the Patreon. Now, if you're interested, go to my website. It's www.texasundervine.com. You'll go to the top of the page. There is a link that says Become a Patron, and you have the option of a one-time donation or to go to my Patreon website. On the Patreon website, it's a monthly subscription. You commit to paying a few dollars a month. You can start with just a couple of dollars a month, up to around $15 a month. And for each level that you can commit to, you get extras that other people don't get. So on the Patreon site, I post things like sneak previews as to where I'm going next to each different winery, so you can find out before they're released. I also put in things like background photos when I go to the wineries. I take a lot of pictures there so you can get a feel for what the winery looks like before you go. And then I also include a video walkthrough. So I will do a walkthrough with my camera around the winery and kind of narrate as I give you a little tour behind the scenes of the winery itself, so you can really get a feel for the tasting room before you go to visit. And so those are just some behind the scenes extras that you get as a Patreon subscriber that the regular listener to this podcast doesn't get. So if that piques your interest, or you just want to help support the podcast, I would be so indebted to you if you would go up to that Become a Patron link and either subscribe to my Patreon or give me a one-time donation. All those things really help. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, then make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe, and leave me a comment down below. So right below the video, go down and where the comment section is. And if you've been to Arche before, tell me what your favorite thing about Arche is. But if you haven't been yet, but you're now excited to go from this episode, well, leave me a little comment telling me, what are you most looking forward to when you go to visit them? And with that, my time is up. So don't forget, subscribe to the podcast and follow my socials to be notified anytime a new episode is released. And until then, happy trails and bottoms up, y'all.
Thanks for listening to Texas Under Vine. We strive to provide you with the best information about wine businesses all over Texas. Be sure to check out our website at texasundervine.com and follow us on our socials at Texas Under Vine to stay up on all the upcoming episodes. Please email us with any suggestions or feedback. Also, contact us if you're interested in donating, sponsoring, or advertising on the podcast, just to help us cover our expenses and bring even more great info to you in future episodes. Above all, travel safely, and most especially, drink responsibly.
Howdy, Vine Trippers. Before we go, I wanted to direct you to my website, www.texasundervine, because there you're going to find a whole host of things. Besides access to the audio versions and the video versions of the podcast, you can also get those on any podcast provider, and then the video on YouTube. But there you're going to find a couple of things. Did you know that I actually sold some Texas Under Vine merchandise? I only have a handful of items available, about 5 different things, but they are up on my store. So if you go to the website, texasundervine.com, and go to the top, you're going to see a link for the merchandise store, and there you can get your own Texas Under Vine swag to proudly show all of your friends that you support the Texas wine industry, and you can get them started on and hooked on the podcast as well, so they can go visit even more of these great wine destinations. But in addition to the store, I also have a Patreon for my subscribers, people that support this show. I do this all out of a work of love from my heart. I do not make any money on this podcast. I'm actually in the red because I support it all out of my own pocket as a teacher. And it's mainly because I love wine and I love the Texas wine industry. So if you're willing to help me do that and you'd like to see more of these great episodes, hear more from these amazing winemakers, learn more about some fun destinations for you to go and visit on your own, I would appreciate if you would be willing to subscribe to my Patreon. So at the top of my website page, again, you'll find a Become a Patron link. And there you can get all the information about becoming a subscriber to the podcast here as a Patreon subscriber. It only costs a few dollars a month if you're willing to commit that. And there are various levels that you can commit to that each give you behind the scenes benefits that you don't get. And I do have some new things in the pipeline coming down soon. So you want to get on that sooner than later. But right now you can get things like behind the scenes photos at different wineries. You can get things like at one level, you'll get a video walkthrough of the winery. So for every episode, I will post a video walkthrough of me taking you through the winery itself so you can see what it's like before you go. And then at one level, you can even find out before everyone else where I'm headed the next week on the show as it comes out. So you'll know before everyone else. You get a sneak peek. So there's just different levels of benefits and they all cost a different amount. And as you subscribe, you become the heart of this podcast. You really are what helps me succeed. You are my community and my people. And thank you so much for those that do subscribe. So if you're interested in joining Patreon, check the Become a Patron link at the top of the website. So again, the website is www.texasundervine.com. You can also go to all of my socials. I'm at Texas Undervine on almost all the social accounts. And check it out and consider sponsoring the podcast and maybe even buying some of that really cool swag on the merchandise store. Happy trails and bottoms up, fine trippers.